Welcome back, listeners. On today's episode of Askewed View, Travis and Jordan spend their time at the mall discussing Mallrats. Stay tuned.
Hey!
All right.
Hey, kids. Welcome to another episode of an Askewed View podcast. I'm Travis Hayward, and we're here today with Jordan Brandis, as always, to talk about our favorite subject, Kevin Smith. And today we're talking about his second film, his sophomore slump, as it was called, but actually evolved into a cult classic, Mallrats. So what does this movie mean to you, Jay, bro?
I mean, Sophomore Slump is totally unfair. It's one of my all-time favorite films, and it was the first film I saw of Kevin Smith. It just blew my mind. It's very, I don't know, there's something about it. It's endlessly quotable. It's seriously fun. I get why people didn't like it, but I mean, like, as a second film from Kevin, it's exactly the kind of film you would expect after Clerks. I mean, to be surprised that he created something like this immediately after Clerks isn't a huge surprise.
Totally, and I mean that's even how he had pitched it initially was hey, it's just Clerks but set in a mall. And I mean honestly, that kind of is true, but at the same time it's like it is much more evolved. There's a lot, and I mean it's with Clerks it was just two guys behind the counter the whole movie. This movie it's there's a much larger set, much wider. Much more space. The characters travel. We see them outside.
Yeah, they go to two malls. They go to two malls instead of one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they do. They do actually. Yeah, they go to the Eden Prairie Mall, and which is the main.
And the Dirt Mall. Yeah.
And the Dirt Mall, the strip mall. Which funny about that. Funnily enough, that Dirt Mall is an actual. Well, I mean, both malls are real, but the Dirt Mall is actually in New Jersey. They've shot that scene in New Jersey. That was a mall that Kevin and his friends used to frequent. But even though the movie's set in New Jersey, the Eden Prairie Mall, where they shot most of the movie, is actually somewhere in Minnesota, I believe. So it's
right.
It's but
so, we have to address something though, because you call this a sophomore slump, but in hindsight, so many years on, this is definitely a film that kind of defined a generation. I mean, why do you think that is?
Oh, totally. It definitely is, and that's even. I've heard Kevin say that before. He said he calls it his gateway movie because that's the movie that everyone brings up when they say, "Hey, I got into Kevin Smith movies because of that."
I can attest to that. I am. I'm a product of that.
And actually, that wasn't the case with me. This was the third movie of his I saw because I had seen Strike Back first, which is not the one you want to watch first, but I saw that first and then Clerks. After that, I decided I wanted to go in order, so I saw Clerks and then Mallrats. But it really, I mean, as far as like all the movies coming out of the time, it was kind of, I feel like part of it was sort of in this weird situation, like both after its time and yet also at the same time before its time, because it really kind of fell in that weird, because it came out in 95, so it kind of fell in this like weird bit of, there's a lot of callbacks in it to the comedy films of the 80s with like the John Hughes movies, like with the Animal House and like a lot of those like kind of college movies. It sort of retains that humor and like with with a lot of the sexuality jokes and there's breasts in it, like all of that. So it kind of falls into like that category, but at the same time it's also pre-American Pie, Van Wilder, like all those.
Well, it embraced its raunchiness far more than something like Clerks. I mean, Clerks was good, but it was mostly dialogue. This, because it had more room to move, and I think the script was a little wider. It had, it had that sort of Animal House feel where, like, you're in this sort of hyper reality where, like, it's real, but it's kind of a cartoon at times, especially whenever Jay and Silent Bob are on screen. Whenever Jay and Silent Bob show up, the rules of the universe just completely change.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also really notable for being kind of one of the first movies that really that really mentions comic books and takes comic books seriously, like not as not as something that's meant to be like a joke or something like that. Like, no, they actually take this stuff seriously. I mean, their lead character Brody is obsessed with comic books, and that's not really something that you'd put. That's not at that point in time. That wasn't something that you'd put at the forefront of a movie. I mean, before that,
and he's not really mocked for it either. I mean, granted, there's a point where like his girlfriend kind of makes fun of him, but it's still not a little. It just becomes a thing where this is important. This is important to a lot of people. It was still way under the radar at that time, but it was significant.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and it was before I think at that point in time, the only real superhero movies were maybe like Christopher Reeve Superman and the Tim Burton Batman, and that's pretty much it.
There were more, especially in '95. There were more superhero movies out. We just don't talk about them. I mean, there's
that's true.
Steel and Meteor Man and
then Howard the Duck.
Spawn.
Oh, hey, so Spawn is actually pretty cool.
Spawn has its moments, but like the CGI is just god awful.
Oh yeah, it's embarrassing. Yeah.
So especially Batman. This is like Joel Schumacher era Batman by that time.
Oh yeah.
So no one's taking it seriously.
Yeah.
So to bring it and give it respect that it's due, much less to the source material, bypassing all like this is a movie. Like here are actual comic books. I mean, like the opening credits are in comic book format. Yeah,
it's true.
It's great.
Mm-hmm. And also, since we mentioned the credits, I want to point out the Stan the Man himself is in the opening credits.
And one of his very first cameos. That started a whole legacy.
Way before he started popping up in all the Marvel movies.
And it wasn't like some random cameo. It's Stan Lee as himself. No lie.
It is, and and honestly, I mean, it's really, when you look at it, I mean, it's really not so much a cameo, because I mean, it's an actual supporting role. Because I mean, he's not only in the opening credits, but I mean, he has a good amount of dialogue in the movie because he gives a big monologue about how his past girlfriend had given up on him because he was too obsessed with his own comics, and turns out to be a whole ruse later. But I mean, it's really, it's this really sweet monologue to try to get Jason Lee not to give up on his girl, and it's really sweet.
I will say that it got me teary-eyed all these years later when that cameo got referenced in Captain Marvel, and everything just kind of went full circle at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did.
That was his last cameo, wasn't it?
I think it was the last one he filmed, but because he did pop up in Avengers Endgame a few months later.
That's right.
I think the last one that he actually filmed was Captain Marvel.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a really significant movie, and you get why it sort of defines a generation. It had that, it sort of embraces the Gen X slacker, like, the mall is, and think about it from the Gen X perspective, right? These malls have been around since, for at least a decade. They were constantly filled, and they're just kind of there. Not once does anyone in the film buy anything.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and it's that really holds true to the title there. Like, because I remember when I kind of missed the whole, mall rat age of like the early, like the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just very, very young at that time, but but I mean, so when I first saw the movie, I didn't even really realize, I didn't know what the term mall rat was. Like, I was like, what, Mallrats, what's this, And,
see, for me, it spoke to me. I was a mall rat for, a little bit before and long after. I finally knew what to call myself after watching this movie.
Yeah. And it really did speak to, it spoke to an entire generation. I mean, your generation definitely, there may be some things here and there that are dated in it, but I mean, honestly, it really, I feel like still kind of holds true today. I mean, even though the mall culture is kind of dying at the same time for the younger kids, like teenagers, 14, 15, before they can drive, essentially, it's like, like a lot of them still do, find places to hang out and socialize. And so you
got to go somewhere.
Yeah, you got to go somewhere. So, I mean, I think it would speak to, like, that age, like, like maybe, like, 8th grader, freshman in high school, sophomore in high school, maybe, like, kind of that area. I feel like they would really – and that's around the time that I'd actually seen this movie. So I feel like it would kind of speak a lot to that generation. And, I mean, maybe not so much to the college generation these days, but definitely to, like, sort of the younger age there.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about the bigger picture, because Kevin Smith actually always works on a much larger scale, whether it's seen in his films or not. This film really established a connective universe. I mean, you needed this film. Clerks was just the foundation, but this really set up the fact that, this is a shared universe.
It did, yeah, because not only did Jay and Silent Bob return, but, like, pretty much the whole movie begins on the death of the Julie Dwyer character from Clerks, who we never see, but everyone talks about in all of these movies. And it's so it's basically like that same plot device from Clerks is carried over to this movie, and, like, it turns out that, like, hey, these people knew who she was too, and her death that weekend or whatever has, like, affected the course of. The course of how
the whole universe. It's one of those Back to the Future moments where, like, the course of the entire Clerks universe was decided that day when she had an aneurysm in the pool and just died.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because I think I read somewhere Mallrats is supposed to take place, like, the day before Clerks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the day before, so it's like that. She had, like. It was like she died on a Thursday night, and then Mallrats is on Friday, Clerks is on Saturday, or something. I read somewhere.
Which is kind of a Marvel move, like you're watching all the films released in a certain order, but that's not necessarily the chronological order.
Yeah, exactly. Like technically, Mallrats is I guess you could call it a prequel to Clerks in a sense.
Somehow,
but, because it takes place the day before. And it's what's also funny about that. They don't really draw back to this too much because they'd recast the part, but of Ethan Suplee's part in this movie, Willem, is supposed to be the same character from Clerks, Scott Mosier's part from Clerks.
Right. Snowball.
Yeah, the Snowball guy. Yeah, so it was supposed to be Scott was originally cast to do that again, and it was going to be the same performance. That's beautiful, man. Just that same kind of weird stoner character,
which eventually came 360 in the reboot. Though he took over his role, which sort of screws up the whole continuity thing. Like, which one is it? So it's like since Ethan came in and, like, crushed it, they decided to just give him the part, but and he just kind of took the character and made it like a complete, like you said, the complete 360 from. Yeah, and it's honestly it's a lot funnier. I mean, every Easter I find myself quoting him. What? That guy over there, that's just a guy in a suit. I still consider Mallrats to be one of the best Easter movies of all time.
It really is, and it's everything. But where was I going with that?
So the question, all right, you would say, now that we're all these years on, and we've talked about it a little bit, does it hold up? I mean, is it still, you're going to go to show, all right, you're a super fan, so you may not be the most objective person to answer this, but, like, you get together with a bunch of friends, you want to hang out and watch some movies, do you just pop on Mallrats? Especially, like, if you don't know what it is?
Honestly, out of all of Kevin's movies that are set in this universe, I would probably go to Mallrats first, because
really?
And I mean, because a lot of the movies from this universe, you don't really need to see a previous one to totally, because I mean, except for the Jay and Bob ones, like the Strike Back and Reboot, like you have to see the other ones to understand those. But but for Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, like, I mean, really any of those you could just pop on at any random time. But I mean, but Mallrats usually, because I've even been in situations like that where, it's like where either I'm hosting a movie night or I, like, bring a suggestion for, like, a friend's movie night or something. I take Mallrats because it's just it's a simple comedy. It's grounded in reality, so like it's not going to be like Dogma where it's 2 hours of fantasy mixed with comedy. It's like this is just it's kind of a fun, just just not particularly deep, just really fun.
Yeah, you can turn off your brain and just go with it, and just like almost like Big Lebowski. Almost the whole thing is quotable. Like almost from the moment it starts, and especially whenever Jason Lee talks, it's quotable.
Yeah, this is honestly, I feel like it's his first performance, but in a way, I feel like it's also kind of his best performance. I mean,
I still find myself quoting him constantly. That that was romantic. Passionate, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Little, you said it was a good size.
Bring on
just,
the
and even his cup, you've been really making that laugh. Like, waste not, want not. I haven't seen the movie in months, and I can still quote it off the top of my head.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I don't know, I feel like it really has stood the test of time. I mean, in terms of just the dialogue and the actors that are in it. I mean, it's like at the time they weren't. I think the most famous person on the movie at the time was probably Shannen Doherty because she had just come off of 90210. But I mean, like everyone else was pretty much unknown. But now it's like all of them are so like super famous. I mean,
which is almost inverse.
Michael Rooker in it
too. Yeah, I mean, and Shannen Doherty is almost the least mentioned person in that thing, and she's big, especially in the 90s. But now, other than 90210, no one really talks about Shannen Doherty. People are still talking about, Ethan Suplee and Jason Lee and Michael Rooker and everybody.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. But, I was actually just reading the other day, not to go too off topic, but, I mean, I just want to say, like, my good thoughts and good vibes go out to Shannen Doherty right now. She
absolutely
revealed with her her cancer diagnosis. So I mean, I'm really hoping that she pulls through. I mean, especially, just as a, I mean, I really hope she ends up making a full recovery, not just, just because that's, it's got to be really detrimental to work with.
It's not good. Yeah, everybody here at the podcast, everybody here in the community wishes Shannen Doherty a quick, speedy, hopefully recovery from this. Yeah,
big time. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, come on, we need you for Twilight of the Mallrats next. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Got to make a trilogy out of this thing.
Yeah. Yes.
But we had talked about this briefly a little bit before, but we're talking about how much comic books are baked into this, and how rare that was, and which was rare at the time. But do you think that set a precedent for things moving forward? Do you think that set in motion pop culture to where it is now? I mean, granted, this wasn't huge, and everybody didn't, wasn't some giant blockbuster, but it made its way into mainstream culture as a cult film. And do you think it sort of, I don't know, encouraged comic book culture to where it is now?
I think, honestly, I mean, I think it did in a sense. I mean, it did sort of introduce, it didn't introduce the prospect of like comic book characters to film, but it introduced, I think this may be the first film that introduced like real fandom, like
right,
not just, I mean, like not just how like a Revenge of the Nerds type deal, like an actual like real
person,
like a real fandom where they actually take fans seriously. Because I mean, not only is Brody, I mean, of course Brody is kind of the comic book guy in the movie, but I mean, there's also, I mean, like Jay and Bob. I mean, Jay, reenacts Wolverine's Berserker attack. So so it's like like he knows comics too, and like there's a lot of references that kind of just keep popping up. I mean, there's even a conversation that T.S. and Brody have about, whether or not Superman and Lois can have a kid together. It's
right, which actually makes total sense. I find myself thinking about that quite a bit whenever it comes up in like it showed up in Superman Returns, and that was the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, exactly.
They had a kid?
When I was
How?
watching that, when I was watching Superman Returns, that's what I thought of. I was like, wow, it worked.
At least someone like Wonder Woman has the fallopian tubes enough to handle sperm.
Handle the sperm. It'll blow. I guarantee it blows a load like a shotgun right through her back.
So no, you're right. I mean, give him respect. Up until that point, it was very Revenge of the Nerds and geeky and hiding in your mother's basement and stuff like that. This really isn't it. But
this is more, yeah.
So I think we're going to take a quick break and then dive a little bit deeper into what Mallrats means for pop culture and fandom and Kevin Smith in general.
Sure, yeah, we can do that, yeah, because I think when we did this the first time, that was that information wasn't out yet.
Right. So we end with how did this pave the way for the future of the View Askewniverse. We'll just switch to Mallrats too.
Okay, yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, cool. So the next question is future several actor that would become big. So you want to reintroduce us, and then we'll go into it?
Sure. Yep.
All right.
All right, and we are back with an Askew View. So next we would like to talk about this film in particular has a lot of really, in most cases, A-list movie stars attached to it. At least at some point they've been A-list movie stars, and I mean it was before they had really took off. This is actually, for a lot of them, it was their first movie. So
it becomes one of those bar trivia questions of like, where were they before they were big, kind of thing. Yeah. And you're right, there's some big names in here. And we're going through the list. I mean, you mentioned Shannen Doherty. Shannen Doherty was in her prime during this, but like Ben Affleck is in this. Jeremy London, Jason Lee, Ethan Suplee. I mean, there's Michael Rooker.
Michael Rooker, yeah. This was before the Yondu kids. This was before Walking Dead, before all of that. Yeah, before Walking Dead. Yeah. This was, I think, prior to this. I think his biggest movie was maybe Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer. Yeah,
Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which made him an interesting choice for a comedy. Mm-hmm. I thought he was a psycho lunatic in this, crazy film. He should definitely play the dad in this comedy.
Yeah, he plays the angry, bumbling dad.
Yeah,
yeah, but it's really, it's crazy how like all these, like these crazy famous names that we all know and love now, like had their first real appearance in this in this small little movie, and it's the good moments too. I mean, like you see Ben Affleck really coming to his own with this. I mean, he had very little experience by this point, and he was even kind of a joke because in the opening credits they call him Buttman. He's a minor character. He has very little scenes, except for he has one scene we could just start to see the real Ben Affleck, the Ben Affleck that would be, the big Ben Affleck. Come into his own when he beats up Brody. Yeah, exactly. And he has just like that long monologue about how he's, basically like how worthless he thinks Brody is and how he's gonna, what he's gonna do to his girlfriend, and just, just this really really just kind of nasty monologue about, but it's well done. It's well structured. I mean, it seemed like his own practice for his much longer monologue in Chasing Amy. He has another one of those, like, just take it, point the camera at him, and watch him go off on this, 5-minute thing. And it's seriously well done. He's the villain, but it's still well done. I mean, for someone that had no screen presence up until that point, that's how you make your mark. Yeah, definitely. Like I think Ben Affleck's only real thing before this was some PBS thing that he did when he was a kid. But other than that, I think this is maybe his first movie. He was in School Ties with Matt Damon, actually, and Brendan Fraser. That would probably be his biggest role before this, or it may have been slightly after. I don't know where it fits in the timeline. But it was a minor role regardless. Yeah, and I know he was also in, I don't know did Dazed and Confused come before this or after this? Because I know he's in there. It could have been almost the same year.
You know, it was back to back. It just suddenly became the year of Ben Affleck.
It really was. And also, Joey Lauren Adams, who's in that, she was in Dazed and Confused as well.
Oh, I mean, that launched her career, and then she also with Ben Affleck solidified that in Chasing Amy. Two of them together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Chasing Amy, she ended up getting nominated for the Golden Globe for that. So it's crazy how just everybody sort of really took off with this movie. I mean, despite that, at the time it wasn't well received. I mean, this one really is kind of one of the more loved of his series.
Oh yeah. Well, it laid the groundwork. I mean, you could see just future iterations. When we were talking about Chasing Amy, so with all these scattered characters, you got Ben Affleck and Joey Lauren Adams, who never share a scene. They're eventually going to get paired off in Chasing Amy. Then you've got Ethan Suplee and Jason Lee, who are going to get paired off again in My Name is Earl years later. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've got all these things where, this is the characters are there. You see the dynamics there. And in hindsight, I don't think Jason Lee and Ethan Suplee share one scene, and I think that's it.
I think you're right. Yeah, they're just in that one scene together at when we first meet Willem. Yeah, that's
it's a sailboat.
Yeah. And then we just kind of, now that I think about it, I think Ethan just kind of is like by himself for most of the movie.
He really is. He avoids all of the action up until he becomes spoilers for everyone, up until he becomes a pivotal point at the end. He's like this character in waiting that comes out of nowhere. But it's almost set up like this grand play. You've got all these things in motion, the board is set, and then when the time is needed, this minor character comes and basically saves the day and doesn't even know it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But I mean, there's so much going on with this film. So let's talk about more. I mean, it was considered a failure. Why do you think it was considered a failure once it was released?
Well, you see, it's crazy because at the time it was it was a box office failure because not enough people had gone to see it. I think it grossed maybe $2 million its opening weekend, but it
which is moderate for 1995.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it wasn't a total bomb, I think, but it was. They were expecting it to make its money back in the opening weekend. Because it wasn't so much an expense. I think it was $6 or $7 million to make. So they wouldn't have had to have had a crush opening weekend to make their stuff back. But
that being said, I still have memories being younger. I went to some movie with my grandma. And I remember seeing the poster coming soon for Mallrats. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wouldn't be able to watch it because I was way too young. But it was an interesting time. It really was. And if anything, you would think that, I mean, like all of his films, they seem to do better with time. They're great when they come out. Some of them are just fantastic and make waves when they come out. But if any filmmaker makes movies with legs, makes movies that have long-lasting impact on pop culture, it's Kevin Smith. Because, it didn't matter. It should have thrived in 1995, but it didn't.
It really should have, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's that was kind of the one that really, once it hit video stores and people started renting it, it kind of, same thing with Clerks, really, because Clerks was a theatrical success because it was only made for $27,000, but they only really opened it on I think New York and LA screens. It didn't get the wide release that Mallrats did. So but it's when those movies his movies actually on the whole, I think his movies do a lot better once they hit the video and DVD market. I mean nowadays when they hit the streaming market, because I see all the time on if any of our listeners, if you subscribe to the World of Kevin Smith Facebook group, I see a lot of posts almost daily of people that are watching Tusk for the first time because it's on Netflix, and they're just, and they're all like, "Oh my God, this movie is so crazy, and I love it." And it's like, nobody went to see it when it was in theaters except for me. So
I love Kevin Smith. I really do. I still haven't seen Tusk. I am so reluctant, and then not because I think it's a bad movie. I'm sure it's a really good movie. It just scares the hell out of me, which is kind of honestly, a testament to Kevin Smith. The fact that it does scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm a horror movie freak. Outside of the Kevin stuff, I'm a huge horror fan, and even that one like made me have some weird dreams. So it's just it's batshit crazy. But I mean, if we can do an episode on it at some point.
Oh, we will. We absolutely will. And I'm going to be forced to watch it. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, when we get there. Yeah, but going back to what we were saying, it's just this movie. It really, I mean, I don't know. There's just something about it that really captures
the time and the place. Really, I mean, Well, Clerks did that as well. Clerks was very much that time and place. And then you're in that in-between period. I mean, Clerks was what, 94, 93? It'd be a year or two before.
94 is when it got theatrical, so 94.
Okay, so 94, and by 95, anything after this, you're in late 90s. So you've got this bit of a turn from where, the Gen X from where it is to where it would be. And everything kind of comes full circle by Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. You're in a completely different generation by that time. But for what it is, I think it's just perfect. But let's talk about, there's so much more to this. Like, why do you think he chose the mall of all places? Was he just pulling one of the diehards? This is the formula at the time. Like, it's Die Hard on a bus, it's Die Hard on a plane, it's Die Hard on a, was he just taking the Clerks formula and just putting it to something else? Or do you think he really had a love of the mall?
It's super funny that you mentioned that. I just want to throw out there real quick. It's super funny that you mentioned that because the original idea for a sequel for this, because they had thought that they had a hit on their hands and that they were going to do a sequel. Kevin's original idea for a sequel was going to be Mallrats 2, Die Hard in a Mall.
Well, perfect.
I think, so that's why
we clearly think the same.
But I just wanted to mention that. But as far as like choosing the mall, it's I mean, I do know that Kevin wanted to Kevin's always been about making movies. Well, especially early in his career, he made movies that were like really reflective of his life with his friends. I mean, that's essentially what Clerks was. It was about, his job because he worked at the Quick Stop and the people that he interacted with. And Randall was basically his friend, Brian Johnson, who showed up in some of the later movies. But so Clerks was kind of more about his like job, but Mallrats is more about what his life was like when he would just go and hang out with his friends. And that's, and that really is encapsulated in a lot of the characters. Like he said that, Brody is actually based on his friend Walt Flanagan, who currently runs the Kevin's comic book store, Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in New Jersey, and he's known now for the TV show Comic Book Men.
And actually gets a call out in the movie. Jay mentioned Walt Flanagan. Yeah, that's Walt Flanagan's dog.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and it's and he's actually also in the movie. He's him and Brian Johnson are the two. They're the two guys that show up in every movie at some point. Walt is always the guy that says, "Tell him, Steve Dave." Like that's.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're in all the movies, but So. But the character of Brody is actually based upon him. I mean, even down to that's why Brody carries around that little Dixie cup full of Pepsi all the time, because apparently that's something that Walter used to always do whenever they'd go to places.
Which is almost a trademark of Kevin Smith at this point. All of his films carry a lot of himself in it, which is probably why once he went off and made like Tusk and Yoga Hosers and things like that, it was almost so jarring because I highly doubt it's less reflective of him. I don't know what part of him Tusk was, But with all the other movies, you could see shades of in Dogma he's wrestling with his religion. In Chasing Amy, he's going through relationship problems. In Mallrats, he's talking about his friends. In Clerks, he's dipping his toe in and really dealing with his career. And you see shades of that. And then along comes Tusk, and I don't know what to do with it.
Tusk was actually, I'll tell you where Tusk came from. That was actually from a very stoned conversation between him and Scott Mosier on an episode of Smodcast.
So there is a bit of him in there.
You can even listen. I forget which number episode it is, but it's an episode of Smodcast. It's called The Walrus and the Carpenter. But Scott and Kevin are just reading this article about a guy who will pay for your he'll give you a place to live rent free so long as you dress up as a walrus for 2 hours a day, and you have to actually maintain. You can't speak, you can't do anything other than what a walrus would do. So they were reading this ad and just going what the fuck is this? And they were like, this would be an excellent horror movie. And Kevin decided to actually make this movie. So that's where that came from.
All right. So going back to Mallrats. I mean, as his second film, and he has so many now in the View Askewniverse universe, and we just capped it off with the reboot, right? They've now rebooted the universe. Do you think there were shades of that within Mallrats? Do you think that was the plan?
I mean, a plan to you mean like a plan for it to be like a shared universe, or
to expand it more than he's given callbacks, but I mean do you think he expected it to reach the point where it was? Do you think he was expecting to go from a bunch of guys in a mall to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back? To have this large universe you can play in.
Honestly, I don't think he expected it to get to that point, because I know, especially after this came out, because he was after this point he was really afraid, because I mean, everyone knew who he was from Clerks and how he was this new up and coming filmmaker, just along with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez at the time. He was part of that group. These core guys that are up and coming and making these amazing movies, and then all of a sudden Mallrats happens and it tanks, and he's all of a sudden he's shit-listed. People aren't really calling him so much anymore, but Harvey allows him to make Chasing Amy for a very low budget, it was under $1 million. So it's but that was enough to really win that one was enough to really win the people's respect back in the industry, and that's ended up paving the way for Dogma. But yeah, I don't think that at the time he necessarily expected that, but I think it was after Chasing Amy hit, I think he was like, I definitely want to continue on with these characters and establishing this universe.
So now that we are where we are, we can finally talk about this, because this was a dream for me way back when, but it's been announced. Hell, production is, I think, been announced for Mallrats 2. We're suddenly getting a sequel.
That's correct.
In all my wildest dreams, I could have never imagined that happening. I mean, how did all that happen? I mean, I know it'd been in development for a while, but how the hell did it finally get greenlit now?
Yeah, well, because I think Kevin had started writing a sequel to Mallrats, I want to say in 2014, 2015. And it was actually going to happen. Everything was ready to go, except I think it was a Universal didn't want to do it as a movie. They wanted to do it as a TV series. So Kevin had reworked it as a series and shopped it around to different networks, but Universal was down to produce it, but I mean, no network wanted it, so then it just kind of went dead. And then after that point, Kevin decided that he wanted to still play with the characters, so that's where Jay and Silent Bob Reboot came from. But now that Reboot has been such a big success and Universal is a co-financier on that movie, they decided, they asked him, hey, this has been pretty profitable for us. What's your next bitch, and he said, well, you know, you guys have Mallrats, and I wanted to make a sequel to that. Can we do that? And they were like, yeah, sure. So, I mean, while
you got the money in the room, you might as well, make them do something with it.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's as far as like an official green light announcement, that hasn't come from the studio. Kevin likes to announce shit before anything's are signed, but he has started writing the script though. So I do know he's gone through a couple drafts already, I think. So yeah, it is happening, and he has a working title for it now, is Twilight of the Mallrats.
Which, I mean, we've seen glimpses of what that world is like. Every time every time Jay and Silent Bob show up in Brody's secret stash, whether it be Strike Back or Reboot, we suddenly get an update on where Brody is and what it's like. And truthfully, given the state of it in Reboot, it's not that encouraging. It's almost post-apocalyptic now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting. Also in Reboot, we don't see the scene in the movie proper, but during the credits, there's a bit of an extended bit from the Jason Lee sequence in that movie where he's answering a text from Renee, Shannen Doherty's character, who then it's revealed that they've been married and they have their own they have a daughter named Banner Bruce. And so he's basically just like reading the text to them from Renee and his daughter, and it's it's a sweet little moment, like, oh, Brody actually has a family, and it's,
well, it's definitely one of those blink and you miss it moments. I mean, I was watching the film, I thought up until you and I talked about it and you told me that, I thought that was just an outtake where like they kept the camera rolling and he was actually answering a text. I didn't realize that was, within canon.
Oh yeah, it technically is, because I know that initially when Kevin had written the first couple drafts for Mallrats 2 back in like 2014, Harley Quinn, his daughter, who plays Jay's daughter in Reboot, was originally going to play Brody's daughter, Banner, in Mallrats 2. So that's how I knew when that bit came up. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, so it's, I guess, I mean, since it's during the credits, I guess you can make the argument whether or not it should be considered canon at this point or not. But I mean, I do know that, when it was written script in mind, like Kevin still had plans for that character, to introduce that character of Brody's daughter. So, I mean, hopefully that still comes true when Twilight of the Mallrats happens, but.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, knowing him, it's very, very likely. He seemed to hold on to little details here and there that become big details later.
Yeah, exactly.
So we want to thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us next week when we talk about Chasing Amy, which is definitely his triumphant film. I know that really put him on the map. If he was a indie filmmaker before, he became solidified by the time Chasing Amy came out.
Chasing Amy, yeah. This was the big one. This is the one that got him into the Academy. So
yeah. So we can't wait for you to join us next week, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for listening. This has been our Askewed View.